Everyone has heard of Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story by now. Whether you've watched it or not is a different question. There's no way you haven't at least heard of it. As of October 6th, the show has the number one spot in Netflix's top 10 TV shows. When is season 2 coming? Why were so many people unhappy that this show was made? How could it have been done better? Stay tuned because we're about to answer all these questions. First off, the show is a limited series. The series is a dramatized retelling of the exploits of murderer and sex offender Jeffrey Dahmer, his life as well as the story of his victims. Dahmer murdered and dismembered a total of 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. It didn't just stop at homicide. Many of his crimes also involved cannibalism, necrophilia, and the permanent preservation of the body parts of his unfortunate victims. The sad reason he got away with these crimes for over 10 years is also due to systematic racism and its effect on the police force. It's no secret the show is a big hit, and though the story wrapped up with a neat resolution, the way it did in real life, you might wonder if a second season could be what lies in store at Netflix. We hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Netflix labeled this show as a limited miniseries, which means that it's only going to run for one season. So you can officially say goodbye to the show during its last episode. Besides that, it would make perfect sense to cut the series at the end of the first season. There would be no material beyond what the story already covered, considering how the real Dahmer was killed by another inmate, Christopher Scarver, in 1994. On the bright side, Netflix is releasing the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes. While we may not be getting a second season for Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, there's still Netflix content we can count on, which is related to the true crime series. If you want more, check out Conversations with the Killer, the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes. For now, Netflix has given no indication that a season 2 is in the works. That makes sense as the show covered the whole thing already, from Dahmer growing up, the homicides and other horrific acts he committed, as well as his trial and death. But maybe sometime in the near future, Ryan Murphy could turn the show into an anthology. The viewership figures that came in from the series are one of the highest Netflix has witnessed. Monster was able to gather 196.2 million viewers in its first week. The numbers are almost the same as Stranger Things Season 4 and Bridgerton Season 2. This could be a reason Netflix may want to think about keeping the same format, but maybe shift the focus on someone else. Maybe John Wayne Gacy. The addition of this serial killer and monster felt forced. Perhaps it was a sign that there is more to come. We'll have to sit back for now and see if any such news comes from Netflix. Next up, there were mixed reviews. Murphy's aim with the show is to take a closer look at how Dahmer was able to commit all these crimes and do it without getting caught. It doesn't only explore the methods of being a serial killer, but it also takes an up-close look at the lives of the victims and the societal failures that left those people vulnerable to a killer. It was definitely an interesting angle. It felt to many audiences that at some points it wasn't a very nuanced story. While Evan Peters has gotten high praise for his excellent performance as the killer, the show generally has received mixed reviews. The final rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 53%. There were many reasons people had issues with the show, actually. Some people are not happy about this show. Some victims' families are horrified knowing that the series is out, and their anger has led to backlash online. There have been statements that the series is horrific and is effectively traumatizing the families all over again. Some had also said they were sad that they had not been contacted about the show and found out about it at the same time as other people. For many, seeing themselves portrayed in the series was hard to watch, not to mention painful. Rita Isbell's brother, Errol Lindsay, was a victim of Dahmer, and she says her family hadn't been contacted at all. She recently talked about why she's not happy about her on-screen portrayal, saying, "I was never contacted about the show. I feel like Netflix should have asked if we mind or how we felt about making it. They didn't ask me anything. They just did it. But I'm not money hungry, and that's what this show is about, Netflix trying to get paid." She particularly talked about the scene with an actress portraying her while she gave her victim impact statement at Dahmer's 1992 sentencing. She talked about how eerily the actress resembled her, having the same hairstyle and clothes. Watching it made her feel like she was reliving it all over again. She was feeling the same emotions as back then. It was really a triggering experience. Moving on, should this show not have been made? While we can definitely empathize with why so many people aren't happy about it, what does this say about freedom of expression? Of course, in that sense, the Constitution does defend the very existence of the show. The stance means that nothing should stop anyone from creating art. This show is no different. Love it or hate it, it is art at the end of the day. We've seen Ryan Murphy in interviews and the like, and one thing is clear. He does care about the work he's putting into this project. Many fans are saying his execution here is way more sophisticated and nicely crafted than anything you'd see in American Horror Story. Many things should have definitely been handled better, but it's clear that he does care about the story and the show both. While we aren't expecting any Emmy nominations, we can't write it off entirely and say that it shouldn't have been produced at all. Despite its issues, there is an audience that watches it and enjoys it. Maybe not in the usual way that we enjoy the media, for sure, but it will satisfy their curiosity about the Jeffrey Dahmer story in a way that isn't exploitative or unfair. Handling true crime stories is always tricky. Whenever you think of America's worst serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer shares the #1 spot with Ted Bundy. Plenty of movies have been made about Bundy, the most recent ones being Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. While that movie largely went unnoticed and didn't go into the mainstream as much, there were jokes about Zac Efron playing Bundy. The movie was based on The Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy, a memoir written by his girlfriend, Elizabeth Kendall. In a lot of respects, we have to applaud the movie for handling its subject matter nicely. The story is seen from the perspective of Kendall as she lives with a serial killer and gets glimpses of his real side every now and then. She wrote a memoir, meaning she was okay with people knowing her story. Seeing it from her eyes really shows how awful and weird it was, rather than romanticizing it. One way to do it would be to use the perspective of someone else involved in the story, rather than using the killer himself as a protagonist. Hold up there. Was racism on set? One production assistant recently opened up about her bad experience working on set. Kim Alsop tweeted that she had been treated horribly during filming. She also said she was regularly confused for another colleague. She said that she was one of only 2 black people on the crew, and the rest of the workers kept calling her by the other person's name. To make matters worse, she pointed out how vastly different they both looked too, with a 5-inch difference in height and visible difference in skin tones and hairstyles too. Being a part of the show took everything she had, and she was treated terribly. Also recently, she said she hasn't even watched the show because of the bad memories she has attached to it. She told the LA Times in an interview that she doesn't want to relive her bad experiences and how they made her feel. The trailer itself was a source of trauma for her, which is what led her to write that tweet, which she didn't think anyone would pay attention to. She slammed the series as one of the worst shows she's ever worked on as a person of color. She also revealed that there weren't any mental health coordinators present on set. Now we have to ask, is the show worth watching? Even though the show has gotten both acclaim and brickbats from critics and viewers, we have to admit, it is a true crime documentary like no other. The pedophile necrophiliac Jeffrey Dahmer, played by actor Evan Peters to perfection, will shock you and yet keep you wanting more. Because the story is so engaging, you really want to know what happens next. You have to admit people have issues with many aspects of the show, but one thing is for sure, everyone watched it from the start to the end. If you enjoyed it, check out these crime dramas. First, we have Candy. This one also came out in 2022. The show stars Jessica Biel as the protagonist. The series follows Candy Montgomery, who seems to be your typical 1980s housewife and mother. From her dinners to her religious circles, everything seems normal, but it isn't. When the need for something more doesn't take long before we see bloodstains on the white picket fence of pristine American suburbia. Truly horrifying in its brutality, Candy's the perfect crime drama if you're on the lookout for a new show like Monster. If that wasn't your liking, don't worry, we have a couple more options for you. This next one is called Under the Banner of Heaven. It's based on a non-fiction book of the same name. The story revolves around the bloody murder of a mother and her little baby daughter. The crime seems to be connected to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The show also boasts a star-studded cast of A-listers, including Andrew Garfield, Sam Worthington, Daisy Edgar Jones, Rory Culkin, Wyatt Russell, and more. This series follows Detective Jeb Pyre as he looks into the case and uncovers a dangerous web of links to Mormonism, distrust in the government, and the effect of inexorable faith. You can also check out I Am the Night from 2019. This one is based on the memoir One Day She'll Darken, The Mysterious Beginnings of Fauna Hodel. The show follows Fauna as she attempts to find out the secrets of her past after being handed off at birth. During her investigation, she runs into a washed-up journalist who turns out to be investigating her grandfather, an LA-based gynecologist linked with the dark unsolved case of the Black Dahlia murder. You absolutely have to watch American Crime Story if you haven't already. Similar to Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, Ryan Murphy was a producer on this one. Every season of this show is self-contained and completed, and they look at a high-profile case, which have so far included the O.J. Simpson trial, the murder of Gianna Versace, as well as the notorious Clinton Lewinsky scandal. The seasons are also dramatized retelling of different true crime stories. And lastly, there's also Dirty John. The show is actually based on a podcast. The series is the scary case of a charismatic man who's a bit like You's Joe Goldberg. When Deborah Newell meets John Meehan, he seems to be the ideal gentleman. But it doesn't take long before the pieces in the picture John creates around Deborah don't quite add up. Before you know it, she's fighting to stay alive. Well, that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, The Focus, for more movie-related news. Until next time, we'll see ya. Bye.